Okay, so anyway, welcome to the class meeting. The one we had for accounting this morning lasted like 15 minutes. This can go longer or shorter, whatever, if you have questions or things. What I mentioned earlier today is um, for these classes, a lot of them, there was a lot of extra work in this first week, although in this class, I tried to kind of dial it back a little. I mentioned that last time we met. So you should be, in this class, you should be, this week we should be working on chapter 22, which means the chapter 20 and 21 stuff, which is like partnership stuff. That should be, you should be finishing that up. That work should be due today. If you're like a little behind, like a day or two behind, I wouldn't sweat it that much. If you're way behind, which you shouldn't be because most of you are on track before. But also, if you want, you can work ahead. And this is a class that I think that might be possible for some people, depending on what the rest of your schedule is. And I've seen a couple students who they've turned in stuff from, they're like just trying to do like two chapters a week or whatever, and finish up early. Whatever you want. So I just had a couple little concepts from the chapter I wanted to go over, and then open it up for questions. All right, so let me pull up my little PowerPoint here and share it with you guys. Let's see. All right, so here's the little PowerPoint. I'll make it full screen. And like I said, so this chapter, chapter 22, is about what are called hybrid forms of business. You've probably heard of them. So this covers specifically what are called limited partnerships, LLCs, or limited liability, and subchapter S corporations. And so here's the point. So you learned about partnerships in chapters 20 and 21. And one of the great things about partnerships and sole proprietorships is they're super easy to start up. In essence, all you do is start a business. And if you start a business by yourself, you're a sole proprietor. And if you start a business with somebody else, you're a partner. That's it. There's no other really legal requirements. Although some of the things like in the case, some of the cases for chapter in 2021 kind of show you some of the pitfalls of that, right? Where people are representing themselves as partners, and then when they get sued, they say, well, we're not a partnership. And the court says, yeah, you are, because you're acting like one. So partnerships and sole proprietorships are great because they're easy, they're cheap. You don't have to do all of these official filings and use lawyers. The downside is that they have unlimited liability, meaning if someone sues the business, they're suing you. And that's dangerous if you have either a dangerous type of business or if you have a lot of personal assets. So that's where these ideas of these hybrid business forms have come up. By hybrid, they mean it's not just a regular partnership or sole proprietorship, and it's not quite a corporation, but it provides some of the benefits of both of those two. So the first is what's called a limited partnership. And a limited partnership is different from a regular partnership because it lets you create two classes of partners. A group who are called general partners, who have all of the unlimited liability, and then a group who are limited partners, who all they really are is investors in the partnership. They don't have any of the management control. And so what they do is they provide capital, they invest in the business, but they don't get to make any of the decisions. And because they're not making decisions, they're not liable if the business gets sued. Beyond the, they could lose their partnership if the business went out of business, but that's it. So that's a limited partnership. And you'll see them either as LP or LLP a lot of times after their name. And then the second one is called a limited liability company, or an LLC. You'll see a lot of those. My business is an LLC. Most states have different laws that relate to LLCs, but they're pretty close. And the people who are the owners of the LLC are called members of an LLC. That's the term they use. You can have it managed one of two ways, either what's called member managed, where it acts like a partnership, or manager managed, where a non-member is hired to manage the business. So in my business, the reason I'm an LLC is because if somebody were to get hurt on my premises, or to have their property stolen while it's on my premises, I don't want them to sue me and take all of my, and come after my personal assets. So they can sue my business, but they won't be suing me. In essence, what we do is we filed papers with the state. I didn't even have to hire a lawyer. I was able to just do that on my own. And that creates a separate business entity from me. So that's a limited liability company. So like a partnership, any profits or losses in our LLC get allocated. So like I have to create a statement each year that splits any of our earnings between the other partners and myself. We have limited liability, which is interesting because I'm what's called the managing member, which means I make all of the decisions, but I still get the protections of limited liability. My mother is a member of my LLC, our LLC, but she's a non-managing member. She was just an investor in it when we started it. But so we both enjoy the same limited liability. And what the other thing that's super cool about LLCs, if you ever are going to start your own business, is that an LLC gets to elect its tax treatment, meaning you get to tell the IRS, hey, I want to be taxed like a taxed? No, that's not a word. I want to be taxed. They done taxed me already, and them taxes, them are some crazy. How many times they taxed you this year? Anyway, I elect how I am taxed. Okay, so I could choose. I want to be treated like a partnership for tax purposes, or I want to be treated like an S corporation, or even a sole proprietorship, which that's pretty much because the IRS doesn't recognize an LLC as a separate type of business. Instead, they recognize that the states recognize LLCs, but they let the LLCs themselves elect how they'll be recognized by the IRS. So that's actually a super cool function. So you get the protection of limited liability, but the tax treatment is something you get to choose. All right, one more slide. These are other forms. The most common other form is what's called a subchapter S corporation. It's called a subchapter. Sometimes you'll hear it called an S corp. And S corps are corporations, but they're small, which means they have less than 100 shareholders. And only individuals and estates can be shareholders, so other companies can't become shareholders in an S corp. They also, if you remember from accounting class, they can only have one class of stock, so they don't have preferred stock and common stock. They just have common stock. And then they do what's called pass-through taxation. When we do corporations in the next chapter, you'll learn one of the downfalls of corporations is they get double taxed. The corporation has to file taxes and pay on any profits they make. Then they pass through the profits to the owners in the form of dividends, and then the owners have to pay taxes on those dividends again. This allows what's called pass-through taxation, just like an LLC, where in essence they just take a share of the owners of the profits, pass it through to the owners, and then the owners pay taxes on that. So these hybrid forms of business, limited partnerships, limited liability companies, and S corporations, all in essence do the same thing, which is without all the complicatedness of creating a corporation, they allow the owners to have limited liability and allow for some advantages in tax treatment. Okay, that's really the whole chapter. This I would have taken an hour to tell you more details and tell you stories in class, but that's really in a nutshell. So, any questions about homework or other things?
If you were to get sued as an LLC, would that just be covered by like some insurance that you have because you like it wouldn't be anything personal?
Yeah, so our LLC does have liability insurance. So if somebody gets injured on my property, for example, right? Because if you think about the nature of my business, people are like loading their storage sheds and unloading trucks. The possibility of someone getting injured there is fairly real. So if somebody sued the LLC, and they won a settlement, then our insurance would be the first thing that would pay. Let's say they got a settlement that was greater than my insurance protection. Um, then what would happen is I would have to pay that out of the LLC's assets. If the LLC didn't have sufficient assets, then the most that my liability is limited to that. So the worst case scenario is I'd have to liquidate the assets of the LLC to pay a settlement to somebody, but it wouldn't touch my personal assets. So my home, my car, my savings, things like that. Any other questions?
You were saying with an LLC that like the person you can have like a member manage it, but then you
Uh-huh.
also said that you can hire someone who's not a member.
Right.
How does that work?
So in the state of Arizona, when you create an LLC, you designate if it's member managed or not member managed. Um, if it's member managed, then you identify one of the members as the manager of the LLC um, on the charter, on the paperwork that you file with the Arizona Corporation Commission. If you don't designate a member manager, then in essence the members just kind of like a corporate board just hire a manager, and the manager is responsible, and then you file paperwork that designates this person as the manager, which means if the state has any questions, that's mine. Nephi, sorry. If the Sorry, that was my son. He's cleaning up around me because he's a good kid who does his chores. um anyway, so it's just a matter of how you designate it on the paperwork, Justin.
Is there an advantage to having it one way or the other? Is it just depending on where you want the responsibilities to lie?
Yeah, I think the reason that they allow that, so the whole idea a lot of times with limited liability, like in a limited partnership, is to allow people to invest money in the business but not have a say in how the business is run directly. And that's what protects them from liability, is in essence they can say, hey, look, I didn't make those decisions. That was run by the and same in a corporation, right? The corporate board, the shareholders elect the board, but that's all the decision they make. Um, so with an LLC, this ability of me as an owner or a member to be able to actually actively be involved in the managing of the business, but still have the protections of limited liability, that's really unique. Um, there is an additional danger too. In a lot of court cases, if they determine that you have, this is the term they use in the legal sense, if they determine you have pierced the corporate veil, meaning as an individual have somehow breached into the business, where even though you were supposed to have limited liability, but you treated the business assets as if they were your own personal assets, then you can lose those protections of limited liability. So I think there's a danger with an LLC if it's member managed, that member could cross that boundary, so to speak, and begin to treat some of the business assets as if they're their own personal assets, and they may lose some of that limited liability protection. An example with my own business is um, like the other day, my daughter had needed my debit card. So I let her use my debit card. Then I got to the store and I didn't have my debit card with me. I was buying groceries. And so I used the business's card. Then I got home and logged into my banking software and transferred money from my personal account over to the business account to cover that. I think if someone were suing me, they might argue that I'm treating the business's assets essentially as if they're my own personal assets. And I could potentially lose some of the protections of limited liability that is the whole reason I have an LLC. So I have to be careful that this is a really long answer, but you were asking advantages and disadvantages. In some ways, it's a disadvantage when you member manage, because you run the risk of commingling the business assets and personal assets and losing that limited liability. Did that answer your question, or just bring up other questions?
I have one more question. How hard is it to like change something from like a sole proprietorship to an LLC, and like an LLC if you wanted to go to like an S corp, and how
Right.
hard is it to change different types?
So to create an LLC is pretty easy. Like you go to the Arizona Corporation Commission website, you download a form, You fill out that form. I think it's a $50 fee, and you send that into the state, and then they'll send you a letter back. And then you have to do one other thing where you have to publish this little statement in the local newspaper where your business is run. That's the most expensive part. The newspaper charges you like $270 to do it. That in essence says, hey, this business is now becoming an LLC. If you have any claims against this business, you may want to file them now before they're a separate entity. And that's it. So it's a relatively easy process. You can do it without a lawyer. Whereas if you were going to form a corporation, you'd have to write up a corporate charter, file that with the state, and that'd cost you a couple $1,000s in legal fees and stuff.
Okay.
Any other questions?
What's required? What do they require in order for you to become an LLC?
What do you mean? Well, I mean, nothing. You have to fill out the paperwork. You have to, you know,
Like, what do you already have to have like established in order for that to happen? Or can anyone just like go in and say, I want to be an LLC and fill out the form? And
pretty much. Some things I would
Isn't it-
suggest is as soon as you become an LLC and get that paperwork in, that you create a separate, like, so a lot of people who are functioning as a sole proprietorship, they will already have a separate checking account at the bank for the business, even though legally it's still under their social security number. So what I would recommend to somebody who forms an LLC is that first you go to the IRS and you get what's called an EIN, an employer identification number, which is like a social security number for a business. And then that you open a financial account, a checking account, whatever you're going to use, in the name of the business using that EIN. That's another way of demonstrating the business assets are separate from my assets, because they're even under a separate identification number. Because a lot of people who have sole proprietorships really don't have a separate checking account. They're just using their same regular checking account that they use for their, they just kind of commingle the business and their own personal funds together. So what you want to do is separate them out more. But legally, there's not a requirement that you do that. That's just a recommendation. But that would actually be done after, not before. And your question was, what do you need before?
mm-hmm.
Nothing. Do you have, speaking of your business, have you ever filed like what's called a fictitious name or a DBA, doing business as certificate with the Secretary of State?
No.
No. So does your business have a name that's not, or is it just like your name?
I own the name, but it's a domain name, so I don't have anything physical right now, just
Right.
online.
So when you apply to be an LLC, one of the things you have to do is you don't have to. You could just fill out the form and send it in. But if they say you send it in and somebody else already has that name reserved, then you have problems because they're going to kick the paperwork back to you. So you go on the Secretary of State's website and you can look up the business names. And then when you file that paperwork, that will kind of reserve that name for you to make sure someone else doesn't have it. And I would suggest, even if you're a sole proprietor, you can file for what's called a DBA, which means doing business as, and then you, in essence, that gives you some protection for your business name so that someone else can't. Because a lot of times what happens is people function as a sole proprietor using a business name that they've always used. And there are people out there who will actually, like, if your business starts to get bigger, they will actually go and search and find business names that are being used by businesses but aren't reserved. They'll go reserve that name for themselves. Then they'll send you a cease and desist letter saying, stop using this business name. And then when you try to contact them and say, hey, I've been using this name for 10 years, they say, sorry, we own the rights to it, but we will sell it to you for this much, right? And the same thing actually happens with domain names. People will buy up blocks of domain names, and then that it sounds similar to businesses that are already functioning. And then when that business tries to switch over, you know, it's a market traded commodity.
Yeah, I've seen that happen.
It's kind of a crappy thing to do. That's what I think. But the world's full of crappy people. Life lesson from Uncle Mike. All right. All right. Any other questions? People are crappy. Life sucks, and then you die. That's like no. Actually, I don't believe that. I believe most people are pretty decent, and even when they do something crappy, a lot of times they were just like, "Hey, it's a legitimate business. I deal in domain names or whatever." You're like, I don't know, kind of. All right. Any other questions? Darby, you're good. Leah, there's no video, so I'm assuming that you're good. Justin just bailed, so I guess he's good. Mickey, you're good? All right. Then, oh, Justin's back. Justin, are you on your phone or something? All right, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I am.
I noticed some people are on their phones, like they get dropped regularly. I'm not sure why.
Well, so I'm just using a hotspot off my phone. So we don't have internet or anything.
Justin, anywhere you are present is a
Okay.
hotspot, my friend. You're a good-looking man. All right.
Oh my God.
All right. It's usually me like roasting Justin, so I thought I need to give him a little boosting up today. Anyway, all right. Well, hey, thanks very much for, I don't know, tuning in. I don't know what the right term is for being here. And again, my number that's my cell number. If you need help, don't be afraid to text me or whatever, and I'll help. Okay. But you guys got this. All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
See ya.